Uh, yes, good afternoon and welcome to the Masterclass. I wouldn't say it's a Masterclass. It's really dialogue. I don't like the whole concept of someone is a master and then, you know. And I think to start off, I would want us to get to know each other. So I'm Xenson, I'm a multimedia, multidisciplinary artist, and in that sense, really. So, we can start from here. We get to know each other, and then we take it from there. I don't know if we need.
My name is Dorothy Nabunjo. I work with Xenson Art Space. It's a multimedia art space as well, founded by Xenson himself. I work as the director. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is George Chizito. I'm a visual artist and a pattern maker, textile designer.
What do you understand by art?
It's expression, sharing, and basically more of expression, expressing yourself visually, artistically, and sharing what you have from within with everyone else. That's my best explanation, as expressing myself using different mediums, using different senses. For example, using all your senses, your sight.
A visual expression of feeling and emotion using any medium.
Art is the ability to think and express all kinds of things that exist.
Okay. Like I said, it's going to be more of interactive. So I think it's better we stand up a bit. When I give you the mic, you stand up, you express yourself, because as an artist, I think it's also important to be expressive. And that shows first in yourself and then in the art. So what can you talk about the art, the state of the art in Uganda today? Do you understand the question?
Thank you, sir. The state of art in Uganda today, I would say, is very beautiful, very, very beautiful, very promising, very challenging, very aesthetic, very, very colorful. Because in Uganda, we have as one of the countries that has the youngest population in the world. So young people are very expressive, ready to express themselves, and young people are doing this and they're doing it beautifully, and we should keep on moving and keep on going. I'm very, very, very positive about it, and really, really love being in the industry despite all the challenges and everything else that's going on in the art industry and the creative sector. The creative sector is very, 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 very vibrant. I see lots of art every day, everywhere. Thank you. You want to talk?
But I think, to me, it is limited. It is limited to some point. Most especially in the, especially political ways, in politics, it is limited in a way that you can't, most of the expressions people want to express through art, they fear to express them because fearing being arrested, especially works that could be related to politics.
I believe it still needs to be discovered and appreciated, and economically supported, because every day there are people creating, and it's so hard for them to advance if there are no opportunities or spaces for them to exist and develop and be better as artists. Um, yeah, that is what I believe the state of art is right now.
According to me, I think the state of art in Uganda is still lacking a bit. Why am I saying that? I think you all know that they already said that. Louder, okay. As I was saying, I think the state of art in Uganda is still lacking. We still need so much, like, how should I say, exposure, because we have a lot of creative artists, but they're not much recognized because for some reason art is seen as, okay, like in everyone's mindset, they feel like art is for those who are less, I don't know how to express it, but they already said that artists are those who just didn't have what to do. You get, though, like the creativity is there, people are creative, but we still need to get there, and we shall get there.
So I've been practicing art. First, I was a graphic designer, so for a long time, and then I wanted to move into fashion. I was a graphic designer for about 15 years doing graphics. Then I wanted to do fashion, so I discovered that if I really want to do fashion, I have to learn how to be a visual artist, how to draw, how to paint. So for the past 3 years, 2018, started doing art. Yeah.
The question was, what are we into as far? Oh, how long have I been into art? Should I say since childhood? Because my parents used to tell me that I used to get the Good News Bible and I used to sketch all those images in the Bible just like that. So I think I've done art.
To me, I can say I've been doing art since I was a child. Because I remember I used to make toys from P1 toy cars. Then I started drawing cartoons. Because in P5, I remember I did a comic book. Yeah, I made a comic book, which was where I was depicting a certain movie, and I drew cartoons in the whole book. I actually got famous in school because of that. Then I kept on doing art in high school. I did it as a subject, but I started doing art professionally when I took it at campus. That was in 2018 up to now. Yeah.
I've been an artist all my life, and I started practicing art professionally in 2018, and up until now I've been practicing. So that is it.
Nyabulime, I know her. I know you. And I know Mr. It's called Nyanzi. Noah Nyanzi. And I also know. There's this lady. Those are 4. I can actually do 10 if you give me time. Yeah, I could do 10. But let it move around as I think.
I think me, I'll make 5. Can we also, is it okay if we start from the forefathers, the ones who even there is Leonardo da Vinci. Ugandan. Ha. I think I'll do our professors at school. Yeah, we have Professor George Cheyune. There is Professor Ife. I don't know his other name. We have Dr. Amanda Tumsime. We have Professor Luboa Paul. How many are those?
To me, the artists I know, I know. Let me put the professors at Makerere aside. Apart from those, I know Sana Gateja, I know Kwizera, Bruno Ruganzu, I know Xenson, I know I'm forgetting the names.
Those are a few questions. I wanted to go on because the presentation is supposed to be about the visual art in Uganda. And I think it's good that I started on that because it has almost demystified my presentation. So we are just going to talk because it's very important to know where you're coming from before you know where you're going. And I think also very important to know the shoulders on whom, the people on whom you're hanging. So it's very important that we respect, but also recognize and appreciate the people that have come before us. And that gives us a stepping stone into who we want to become. If we don't know where we come from, then probably we don't know where we're going, or we have a bleak future. I mean, it's a whole lot of history, because it doesn't even start with Margaret Trowell. There was still a bit of expression even before Margaret Trowell. But in terms of academia, we might say that the art as we know it today almost starts with Margaret Trowell. I don't know if you know the dates when she started the School of Art. I won't go into that. Again, that's your research. And then we can look at the earlier artists that started, then went into teaching. Obviously, we all know the bit of history of the Makerere School, because most of the art really is defined by the teaching of Makerere. Whether it's Chambogo, most of the teachers that taught at Chambogo are still products or students of Makerere or the Makerere School. Whether it's Mike Angel or Inyad, and Agenda. So, but we need to know this history. Then it in a way gives us space to look at what others have done and what our contribution is or should be. You need to know who are the people that I'm stepping, the steps into which I'm stepping. Mukasa is actually one of the most famous Ugandan artists. You can read about him, Google him. Ntensibe. You guys know Ntensibe? Yeah, you see, you've heard. So before you know where you're going, you need to know who are these people. Even going back to the days of Margaret Trowell. Of course, some of them are Kenyans. Many Kenyans came. Simon Jau, I don't know if you heard of Tio. So you can see that as we move, we need to go back. What does that mean? If you know the methodologies of all these people and what they were doing, if you know their work, then it also it teaches you something rather than just teaching. I mean, learning about Picasso's and of course there is the art world and the art market in Europe. But if you don't know what's at your backyard, because most of these people actually used traditional methods, but also they improvise with materiality. So that shows you that, okay, if I don't have paint, what do I do? there was a lot post-independence, post-Idi Amin, post-Obote, and then NRA coming in. So their challenges might have been a little different from our challenges today, or your challenges today. So what does that mean? That you need to begin to trace. And as we all know, art is a mirror of society. So we express what is happening within our immediate community, or what is happening within us. It's what posterity really will judge us with. If we, of course, he talked about the politics and the self-censure. Whether you become safe or not, or whether you hide, at the end of the day, 100 years from today, they will open the history books, they will look at all these artworks, and then probably there won't be a relationship between what was happening and what the artist did. That's why the first question was, what is art to you? Why do you even do art? Why do you even want to go and do art? You know? Obviously, there is layers of communication. And sometimes I also ask myself, what's my contribution as an artist to this platform, to the social media and wherever? Is it that I'm just receiving, I'm just consuming, And also I hate to become part of the statistic, but we become players, I think is the word. Bona fide players and part of the state of the art, of the arts, okay. So the names that maybe they are doing something to be not necessarily being a statistic, but to be a part of the state of the arts. Obviously, you talked about the music. Music is very active, and it's been active for a long time. But also music, in a way, has a bit of advantage, but it's not an excuse. But one of the reasons for music is because music is in the subconscious, in the domain, in the public space of the consumers. Unlike art, which is more of elite, gallery, and museum, and talks like this, So it seems to be alienated or distracted from the audience, So as we think about the challenges, we can still decide to take art to the people. Because at the end of the day, it's the people who are going to carry the memory. We are not here for 200 years or 100 years. So the reason you might know File Lutaya or Paul Cafero, even if you know little about maybe their music, is because their art was within society. Obviously, it talked about society, but it was also within the subconscious. So it's also a bit challenging for us to begin to take art to the people. So briefly, I think that's what I can talk about. The challenge of trying to be artists, especially in this space today, but also looking into the future. At the same time, not being silent. I like to use the word silent. It's on purpose. Because most people, artists go into their shells. So I know you know that. Most of you know that. So with that background, or even almost, I've almost exhausted what I wanted to say. I just picked a couple of images here and there. as a spaceman. I'll use myself as a spaceman and a couple of other people. Really, in a broader sense, to talk about art today. Then you're playing football, you know. Then there is the mathematics club. So there are all these layers that we grow up, you know. And sometimes maybe it's either you're being good at all these, or you don't know where you want to. But as kids, obviously, you're excited. So you run here, you go play football. Then from there, they tell you, in the evening, master party, traditional dance and soloist. And then you run. And there is really little to even think, this is what I want to do. Or, you know. So you find that you grow up with all these layers inspiring you in one way or another, or, you know. The arts are the last result. That whoever fails anywhere else becomes an artist or a musician. Like it's a scapegoat for the failures elsewhere. But actually, if you look at psychology and the history of the IQ and the history of knowledge, from the medieval times, there is evidence that the arts are the highest. To be an artist, you must have the highest level of IQ. And this was obviously orchestrated in people like Beethoven, Shakespeare. They are known to, even artists like Rembrandt, they are known to have had the highest IQs within their times. So to be an artist, you need to have the brightest of brains, by the way. So for me, I was lucky that in school, really, number one. The first time I was second, I almost cried. I hid my report. So in class, 100 in mathematics, 90. The least really, I think, was 97 in math. From S1. Primary, definitely, all my reports, and I have my reports, number one, like up to P7. S1 up to S4, 1 or 2. You know, and this is on record anyway. So what does that mean? And then in HSC, I did PCM art, you know. So, and then I went to university. Obviously, I got a first class, but what does that mean? You might be passing. For me, I was passing the exams, and you're a good student. But what challenged me always, or what gave me an impetus to move, was really the art. Most of the time, I would be in the art room in school, O level, chemistry class, or practicals. I would go to the art room, So to be an artist also, you must have a certain layer of point of view. And usually that requires a working brain, a bright, for people to see. For you to see something, you need to have to be bright. Otherwise, if you're not bright, then you won't see many things. They'll bypass you, I don't know if you see that. Obviously, in class, the so-called dull students were dull because they are not enthusiastic. They don't want to ask questions. They sit at the back. Then the class ends and they go out, get their books, go and bathe, and then they wait for the bell, But bright students, and it's an argument we also had yesterday, but one or two, and an old guy was telling us that if you produce a kid who is not stubborn, be very afraid, Because most stubborn kids are really bright kids. Because they try to find things, experiment, pick this, I don't know. I don't know. These even, I mean, especially girls. If you see a girl is like a tomboy, she's doing this. Like there are all these mannerisms and characteristics of someone who is bright. And that's where the dilemma also comes. And that's why someone talked of our art as still lacking. It's because there are these people who ended up doing art without necessarily being artists. And that will show in the expression, I don't know if you know what, you hear what I'm saying. It will show. But the layers of expression in those plays and what he's talking about, 30 years of bananas, even in the next 100 years, will still be a relevant play. Why? Because the artist is there to express himself, to call a spade, and not a small spoon or a big spoon. So I'll show you some images, and then we'll talk. I don't want to talk about my art because I feel the audience should begin to interpret the art. The audience should be able to find layers of entry points into the art. But you see, sometimes, you need and then you're done. So, multimedia artist, installation, whatever. Okay, maybe I can talk about the first one. Multimedia artists interrogating contemporary issues through a synergy of installations, videos, performance, poetry, fashion, painting, and graffiti. The poetry is more really rap, hip-hop, whatever. Someone talked about lack of spaces and whatever, and we went through that. Leaving university to show anywhere was really like a crazy thing. There was one Tulifanya now, which is AKA. It's on this street. Probably the only big, interesting gallery. The other gallery was Makerere University, and then I think there was a normal gallery. So to leave university and begin to show was really almost unheard of. And that also takes me back to the state of art today. So that's why I started the art spaces, because there are fewer. But because of the many years now, at least now we have Afri Art, we have Umoja. There is Uganda Gallery in I don't know if you guys know. And by the way, you need to begin to know the galleries and visit these spaces. Uganda Gallery is in Namirembe, just below Namirembe Cathedral. Obviously, there is Amasaka, which is a new gallery by Sekajugo. At least there are more. And hopefully, there is also 32 Degrees, not necessarily a gallery, but it's an art space. So there are more art spaces now than when we left university. So I think that was one of the... so that one is gone. The rest of the literature and also for you guys is background noise. The most important thing is really your work. I can't emphasize it more. You might have all these writings, however good they are, really, it's before I go to another slide, anyone who wants to say something? If not, then I can go to, I won't talk about the work. I want you to talk about the work.
Thank you. I love the...
So as artists, we should be able to express ourselves and find a language. I like what you said, but you've not said anything really. Maybe I can talk about this guy is obviously there is, I can briefly talk about, there is what we might call suffocation of political opponents. We might talk about kalyamagwa. Kalyamagwa ya kekamanya wekagagaya, but kalyamagwa is also it's from within but also from without. In a space of amagwa, buli wogira gajja kulinya gajja kufumita. So it's and then there is also the if you look at riot, mu riot mujja kubeeramu ebipiira, bajja kusiba ekipiira bakwoche, and that's almost across Africa. So the presence of the tire, but then also we know that the tire bakolamu lugabire. So there is also the element of artisanship. But that's all I can say. I didn't want to explain, but you guys need to see with an artist the third, what they call the third eye sensibility. You know, you need to begin to dissect things rather than looking them at third face value. The last image, we all know the concept of Ugandans being mad is not a new phenomenon. Last year they said, someone said 15%, 14%, 18%, huh? 14% is Ugandans are mad. There was a madman who used to move from Tinda via the city square, Nakawa, and back to Tinda. But every 1 o'clock, he would be at a certain space just after City Square. Everyone is like he had a watch, but he didn't have a watch. For him, he would be just walking. And that's really crazy. Of course, you look at other layers of recycled, dumping, mivumba, and all these layers. Still, the politics of suffocation, of okusiba, like the mind, blockage of the mind, and all those. I like to talk about a lot blockage of the mind, or suffocation, or brainwash. These are self-explanatory, I guess. The last image is Nachivubo Channel. That's the title. And then this is Khan Princess, the first image. So it's up to you to interpret the way you want. Consumerism, consumption, but also Fukirayo Kanchai is every office you enter, really, either kasoda kaliwa kachai kati, there is the word that really ave kasawo yalabo omusawo, meaning you have to dip into your pocket for you to see the doctor. It's kind of a bribe. It's corruption. For you to see the doctor, you must bribe someone. So the concept of I don't want to go into that because you need to see the layers yourself. So but on the other side, the consumption might lead to that, but also the lack of free expression might also lead to that. These are, by the way, I wanted to know those that are doing murals. Okay, anyway, so this, the first image really is graffiti, which I call Bantufiti. It's something I might not go into now, but Bantufiti, I used to move a bit, travel a bit, and we used to go and do these illegal graffiti pieces. In Europe, they are all, graffiti is a big thing in Europe. So, and then, of course, we all know graffiti is about fonts. Mostly it's about fonts and all these, you know. So I thought I need to create my own graffiti style that when you see it, you will know. And that's why I started it and then called it Bantofiti. So when you see it, even if it's in Berlin or in New York or in Beijing, and you all know that. And it's also another thing we've not talked about. It's something that I want to talk about as still as part of the state of the art. How unique are you? Is your work representative of you? Is it recognizable? Because it's very important to be known for. If people see other people in your work, then maybe that's not a very good thing. So part of the research or the state of the art is really some of the names that you guys also gave is because they also have a distinct expression. So the other one is the other one is still Bantofiti. This one is the graffiti that everyone does. You start lettering and all that. And obviously today, I'm actually a graffiti pioneer. There is another guy who is presumed to have been a madman, Zunga, Dr. Zunga, who used to use charcoal. He used to write crazy words with charcoal. But in terms of graffiti, as we know it, cans and stuff, that's where I know we started. So these are paintings. I might not go too deep into them. I don't want to go in. These are sculptures. There is that slide. The art space and what it stands for. We know that there is ceramics, there is, today art is really, really almost, and the layers, art can be anything today. It can be installation, it can be performance, it can be video, it can be photography, and then there is the traditional drawing, painting, sculpture, weaving, fashion. There is also fashion as commercial, but then it's fashion as an art. I think I'm more drawn to fashion as expression, fashion as art, fashion as sculpture, fashion as poetry. There is what else? If you also want to dig deeper, music can be art. So briefly, I guess that's enough for now. And I'm opening the floor again to you guys. Questions, comments. It's dialoguing, really. So whoever wants to say, or question.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So the question I have is actually what you talked about that has been on my mind for some time is that why do we regard art here, let's say here in Uganda, to be a form of, like, it's for the elite? Why is it considered to be as something that is for the elite, yet the mentality was or is still that people who do art are the people who are not doing so well in life. So when you tell your family you're doing art, they're going to send you all types of other work to do because I don't know. So the question is, why do people consider art to be a form of like elite expression here in Uganda, and yet some people consider it to be a waste of time? Yeah.
we want, there is always the truth that people don't want to really talk about. Art as we know it today is more of a Eurocentric phenomenon. African art as we know it was art for the community, for society. In fact, what the Europeans demonized as art, they really rendered it a low expression, was like mat making, pot making, the masks, the masquerades, the dance, costuming, even within the religious circles. So you find that art was part of our society. Art was always, it had a purpose, a utilitarian feel to it. The art yet for Europe, you find the art going on a wall. It was more decorative. Obviously, except maybe during the religious art, which was to impose, to create a kind of narrative for the supreme being. But along the way, art has grown to because we can't live in a void. So art has grown in a way, but still that layer of elitism. It was for connoisseurs, for the Medicis, and also for church. These were obviously there were the people with the money, and the people who commissioned the Michelangelos and the Rembrandt and all these other great artists to paint Sistine Chapel, to make the frescoes. And I think what we need to do, and we talked about it earlier, as the art fraternity, is to begin to engage the audience. We might not change our expression, but bring it to people, for them to see it, appreciate it, and assimilate it at the same time. And why also it becomes elite is some of it, of course, is a stereotype where most Ugandans think art galleries are for the land, for the rich, and for people who have money. The others, the people who go to art galleries to maybe buy painting. So the role of the artist also is to begin to bring, if that's what you feel that art is still elite, is to begin to engage. You can start with your family. They might not like what you do, but you put it in their face. It's like marketing. In their face from morning to evening, morning to Sunday, until they know what you're doing and you explain to them. And then eventually, obviously when you start maybe making a bit of money, which is another layer I may not want to go in, they will understand. But you ask yourself, why is music, or not just music, but even traditional music, the moment traditional music plays, everyone is playing, or everyone is standing up to dance. Kadodi. Even if you're not a Mugisu, you hear Kadodi, you start, So why? Because first of all, Kadodi as an art form is embedded in the culture, in the conscience of the people. It's been there for years, but also people understand it, and it's part of them. Society, and then demystify the whole concept of elitism. But I think still really, because production itself putting on an art show is first of all is an expensive thing. You look at layers of rain elements, so naturally already, just even if it's a simple thing like painting, you begin to think of all these layers. Already that alienates from, but you could also think of art that people are going to play with, people are going to pull out, interactive kind of art, so by so doing, or installations that people can enter or go out, or in that way you begin to demystify art as elite, because everyone is welcome. I mean, in galleries, there are even placards, no photography, don't touch. Some even put a mark, don't cross this line, a red so there are all these layers that really are elitist is the word. So but I think we can demystify that by beginning to engage the audience, not alienating the audience. But also, I think, to a greater extent, talking about what they would understand, what they understand, something that relates to them. It doesn't have to be direct or illustrative, but they should have an entry point into all this. Yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Bob. Sorry, I came in a bit late. My question, also sort of a discussion, comes from this. There is a sort of a theology that back then, when the masters used to create, I don't know so much of art history, but then I am certain back then when the masters created the Leonardo's, I don't know if they documented, if they wrote about their work after painting, but right now, in the present day, it is a bit harder to sell art as just being beautiful, or as just decorative, or something that intrigues the sight. You need to always attach a story to it, a story or a writing or a documentation. Why is it harder now for artists to be artists without having to be an artist and a writer? Understand?
That's a very interesting observation or phenomenon. Europe, really, they were a bit more developed then. They had critics, they had writers, all these terminologies of curator, of connoisseurs, of custodians of the arts, were already present even on the onset. In medieval times, they already had critics. And they also already had started the concept of newspapers. They also had already beginning to have catalog resumes of artists. And these were professionals who, so you find that critics would be friends of artists. And then they would follow the artist's life or the artist's work and begin to write about it. But then also some artists were really like multi-dimensional. So they would write about their work, sometimes using poetry, sometimes through letters, like Van Gogh. Van Gogh, most people didn't understand Van Gogh until he died, actually. In fact, most people claim he sold only one work. But when he died, he used to write letters to his brother. His brother used to support him most of his life. So through the letters, he used to write about the work, about his work and what he was doing, about certain paintings and why he was using certain yellows and certain blues and certain greens. So he would write, today I feel weak, but I went to the field and I saw this landscape, so I went back and used this flowers. I forget the name of the yellow. So it's melancholic, and I'm using this yellow. So he would talk about his work. Of course, today, art has come a long way. But the disadvantage, especially in Africa, is we have fewer historians, art historians, fewer critics, even curators. Because that's usually the role, it's not necessarily the role of the artist, although you as an artist can write about your work. But what you write really is in the work. So that's why you need to be as truthful to yourself. That sometimes you don't even need to talk about your work, but people will see the story and the truth within your work. Obviously today, most artists just come out and they're looking at selling. So that in a way also takes away from the art, because you're not sending out feelers, you're not looking at your community, you're not seeing things, because you're more engrossed in making this art that will sell. So the story gets lost in translation. But if you're true to yourself and you know what you want to say, the story is always there. But also the other layer of why art presenting things, yet I think your primary role should be really to make art. But then again, if you're in a space where these are not non-existent, then you learn the hard way. And the hard way is to be all these. Maybe if you get a representation, a gallery, then they can begin to think about someone who can write about your work, or who can write a proposal for you, or who can panel beat your CV or your portfolio. So it's still a big challenge in Africa, really. But I mean, it doesn't hurt for you to teach yourself to write. You don't have to, but I don't know if I'm answering that question right.
I actually wanted to say something from his question. To me, I think art shouldn't be for the eye or for decorative purposes, but it also has to do with, it has to be communicative. It has to represent something, the subject matter in this case. So I think, to me, I think it is correct to have and to know to do the writing about your artwork, because most of the artworks nowadays, they don't only be decorative in a house or a museum, but they have a story behind them. And some artworks actually have several meanings. They have the denotative meaning and the connotative meaning, which is the direct and the one that is hidden. So I think that one also comes in the art being versatile, not only for visual aesthetics, but also the subject matter.
I would have a question like, what were you doing when you were 24 years old? When you were, let's say, when you were done with university, what challenges did you meet as a young artist? How did you go through it? And what advice would you give to young artists who are trying to advance more in their careers and their practices?
So there was a challenge of where to even exhibit. But sometimes they say if you can't join a table, or if you don't have a table, then you build one. So, but the most important thing, when I left university, obviously, I knew I wanted to be an artist. But also for me, I had all this baggage because I had left engineering school. So everyone was thinking, he has wasted his grades and all these layers of how can he leave engineering and go to art school, you know. So I wanted to also prove a point. So for me, when I left, I knew I had to be an artist, really. And so when you're clear about what you want to do, it becomes slightly easier. You don't feel the challenge, or you don't feel like a hindrance, because you know, okay, I'm here, I need to prove to these people that leaving engineering school was not a mistake. I was born to be an artist, and and being an artist doesn't stop. The same challenges that you have when you leave university are the same now. It's a deep dive into the ocean. There is no other way out. Dorothy here was at, she had this talk with, I talk a lot with Dr. Navulime. The challenges are still the same. Whether you're 30 years practicing or 40, it's still the same challenge. Things don't seem to be enough. But knowing exactly what you want to do, and what your expression is going to be, what your story and narrative is, it becomes slightly easier. And I think that's where, that's a kind of a message to young artists, that first know what you want to do. And the earlier you discover your practice or what you want to say, the easier. Whatever challenge comes, you know that you can't avoid it. You have to survive. It's a struggle, but you know it won't hit you as someone who thinks, I thought I'll do art and be a billionaire, you know. But through patience is key. I know that many people come out of university and they want to be star artists and they want to buy land and build these big studios. But they always say there is no lift to success. You have to take the stairs. It's that hard. You have to go through the processes. Indoctrination by fire. Because when you leave university, there are things you need to discover that are not taught at university. Even if it's simple things like material. If you don't spend 1, 2, 3 years with the materials that you want to use, you will still be half-baked. But if you work day in, day out on your materials, then you know exactly how your materials behave, how to treat them, where to find them. You know, this does not come in 1 or 2 or 3 years. So, patience and persistence. I think those are actually, for everything else, really, is patience, persistence. And then the whole concept of art as a career, really, it's first of all, it's subjective. But if you persist, then people will recognize you, and then people will begin to buy into your craft. But if you're just rushing and you're touching this and touching that and not spending, then it will be hard for people to even tap into your energy. You know, because people won't know where to place you, because you're chasing fame. You know, chasing fame is like there is this trick where you put something here, you know, at the back of your head, and then you keep running and chasing it, and then you will never Yeah? Yeah, something like that. Where you'll really never catch it. So, yes, the challenges of spaces, but also, and I feel it's a challenge to be patient. Most people are not patient with art, really, especially now. That's why you talked about many people just go to the internet, pick things and paint, because they are looking for that either quick buck or they want to be famous. But art is a process. The other challenge, I don't think really is challenge, but it's experience. The other thing is, yes, we all know art, you're on your own. That sounds simple, but in all layers. Let me look at, for instance, the finances. Banks, maybe now they are beginning, and that's why art has a bit changed now. But you go to the bank and say, I want 20 million to buy canvas and paint. Hell no. So, and what we used to do, maybe as an example, is we used to to try and look for jobs, t-shirt printing jobs really, banners, maybe sculptures here and there, maybe interior design here and there. But when you get that money, really, because the bank won't give you a loan, you have to put it back. And then you can begin, because of your persistence, but also good work, then you can begin to have a collector base. But even within the collectors, it's not enough because you have to keep working. So as you get that money, you have to keep investing it back. How? You all know Mary's. Is it Mary's, the small paints? Mary's? Okay, let's call them Mary's. So when you live in university, the cheapest paints are Mary's. Those are they are not professional paints, but they can pass. And you use them and you sell a piece of work. I know that most people that bought work with Mary's 20 years ago, the work is cracking because those are not professional paints. But you're starting. You buy, you sell, you buy Mary's because they are cheaper. You want to start. So you are in your mother's garage or wherever at home. You steal some parts, you come and paint, and then you're lucky, you begin to sell, and then you can't buy Mary's. Now you maybe used to get canvas from Owino, and then now you begin to say, okay, you get to buy better Winsor & Newton, better tubes, so you see that you need to invest back. But you see, the time between selling and is not, especially if you're starting, you don't expect to sell 20 paintings at a go. So there are spaces of not selling, but you need to survive. And then within that also your parents are becoming maybe impatient with you and they're, hey, fees, what? So, and if this is the fact, the truth. But you keep, then you still won't make big paintings, but you still get good canvas and still use now Winsor & Newton. And then you begin, and then you can maybe sell these. And then as you do that, then you can say, okay, now I can buy better canvas. And then still small, then you can say, and these are years going. And then after that, you can say, I can now work on 100 by 100 or 120 by 150. This is a process. And then before you know it, you're making almost like murals. But these are just paint, and we are just talking about painting. We have not even talked about sculpture. Wood sculpture where you need easels, a set of easels. You can start with simple that break, and then when you get better money, then you can send for professional easels from Europe, from the UK. You know, everything is a process. Even the wood itself, to get wood to make, it becomes, you know. So it's. I'm hoping I'm not painting a glim picture, but the patience and the persistence and you discovering yourself and improving in material and improving in your technique eventually pays off. The Bagamba, and I've been teasing some Arsenal friends of mine. There is an Arsenal friend of mine, actually he's at school. We were kuba Arsenal guy aralo musujja. So I used to tell him, Mugamba, and he was very bitter. I sent him a message, Okuweso kasiku bulia. You know what that means? You know? You don't speak Luganda. Okuweso kasiku bulia is to be fast is not to have it. What does that mean? To be there fast doesn't mean. So right now you might see, especially young artists, very quick. It's not a bad thing. Quick and selling, and then you're there. You left university together, and you're seeing this person, and you're like, nange kampitawe kambukire baba wabukidde. Every dog has its day. So what does that mean? If you follow your process, it's like muvule. You know omuvule. Omuvule gusobola okumala emyaka 3. Negukula nomula nogamba nienge eri wali alina esanja, you know esanja akuma omuliro, like I'm hoping you get what I mean. Bugu esanja nolaba omuliro wa neighbor gwaka ayota naye nga akozesa ki sanja gyali jja tomanyi neggwe wonootandika omuvule guno ne bw'ojjako ettabi limu n'oliteeka wano n'otandika okwota ettabi eryo, osobola okumala emyaka 100 ng'oyokyezzaako just ettabi ki ettabi limu. You know what that means? Naye ng'oli essanja lyamuggwa nako kubanga katugambe lubadde lusuku nga terwaggwawo dda. So what does that mean? Nti that slow process eventually, because you're in for the long run. I'm not saying you should be too long, but if you're keeping your consistency, discovering your material, being consistent with what you're saying, and being patient, eventually it will pay off. In fact, oyinza okwesanga people are buying into you and you can't even afford. And then you can begin to kweramula. You can say, this year, let's say if you're a painter, you can say, this year I'm going to make 1 painting. And they will wait. And they will say, and I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just giving you an example. That when you've reached a certain space, Dorothy, I'm making sense? So, it's very important. Those are Kankoma. You want to add something? Can I still continue a bit on that topic? So some things seem cliche, but I think they are important. I talked about them. Some people say there is nothing new under the sun, but there can be something new under the sun. Not necessarily new, but you can have your own expression, being unique and different. You know, I don't know if you know Basquiat. That's why I wanted you to know a bit of to read a bit. Basquiat had his own unique narrative. When you look at the work that he produced then, and you look at his contemporaries, no one produced work like that. And that's why he is part of history. I talked of the 100 years from now. So Basquiat is part of history because he had his own expression, which didn't resemble or look like anything else. Anatsui, probably you know Anatsui. You'll read about them if you don't. He has become one of the biggest African artists. Why? Because his expression is unique to him. You know? So it's important that when you do something that is unique to you, it becomes even easier for people to see you, even for people to buy into your expression. Because you are alone. But if you're painting like the other artists and maybe you're doing like this one, then it's like hip-hop or rap. If you rap like Jay-Z, why would someone buy your album when there is Jay-Z? Or let's say GNL. If there is GNL, why would someone buy your music when there is GNL? Because you're rapping like GNL. So, it doesn't really make much sense for me to buy your album when I know I can buy a GNL album. And probably it will be the same price. Okay, I might buy your album, but you will be in the shadows of who? Of GNL or Jay-Z. Why? Because the other guy who sounds like GNL, or the other guy who sounds like Omotuju. So your name itself, your expression is hindered by the work of someone someone else. It could be inspiration. It's good to be inspired. But again, you need to begin to fall into yourself, to discover yourself. And the earlier, the better. That's why I said it's a slow process. It's patience. You might be wanting to discover a style, but it won't just come. But if you keep persistent and keep working, it could be through material, it could be through an idea, then you'll automatically find that this is your comfort zone. You keep, and somehow you'll even find this is what you're doing for a longer time, or for you get excited of something, you start doing it, and then you'll find that you're so excited, you wake up, and then you'll find your style. It's something that evolves. It can only evolve if you're patient, but if you also keep persisting, if you keep working. Because as you work, you discover new things. It's the hardest thing to really discover yourself. But you keep working, then eventually, let me give this example. You guys know Sandra Sobi. Do you? Okay. You all know that she has a very good voice. Not in the arts, but you know that she has a good voice. But along the way, when you have a good voice and you can be soprano, you can be alto, you can even be a tenor. In fact, there is a time she was, I think, in Senegal, and I had her singing these high notes, almost like, like the sopranos, the falsetto, opera. And I think even up to now, right now she has a comfortable voice, but she needed to take time to discover her actual voice. And that actual voice can be a voice in which comes easier to you, which you feel comfortable without flexing muscles, without, something that naturally comes to you. It's not an easy thing, but you need to keep singing. You need to be intentional. You need to keep seeking, searching, until you find your comfortable voice. And you say, okay. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys know Erykah Badu. Now, Erykah Badu can actually sing like Mariah Carey. I don't know if you guys even know. But along the way, of course, she was she was brought up with these hip hop guys and whatever. So she's one of the pioneers of what they call hip hop soul. More like what's her name? Name as this as you know. But so she could hit high notes, but she kept writing and discovering herself until she started to. She was actually among the very first people. The other person, there was India Ari, Sade, but Sade came out. Then she knew, she found her comfort zone in almost like what they call sing-songing. Singing, but not like talking. All along, just like, but then you feel it's deep, and she found her comfort zone there. And then she became a platinum selling artist just because her voice was unique to her. She discovered her style. No one else had it. In fact, everyone else is almost in the footsteps of Erykah Badu. And then, of course, she brought in these elements of African art, African fashion, then even African stories, But her voice, she found that voice that was unique to her. And that's what you need as an artist. You could be a graffiti artist, you could be a painter, sculptor. Dr. Nabulime actually was a student of Professor Nagenda. I don't know if guys, that's why I said you guys need to know the history. So you find that there are some elements of similarity. But as she kept working, over years, she found her own voice. So it's a patient thing. Now when you see, that's why you saw this, I asked, do you know the artist? I know there was a name, but I don't know if you saw the name. You'll automatically know that's Lillian, because she has worked over years to discover her voice. So you can actually, it's very hard to find, but you keep working, you keep being consistent, then eventually you'll find.
Since we're talking about style, my question to you is, at what point did you say, I think now I've found my style as Xenson? And was it clear from the start that this is your style, or has it evolved over time and people can still recognize when they look at your work and know, yeah, I think this is Xenson?
It's a kind of a contradiction also. Why? Because I'm the person who hates style. I really hate style. It's just that for the case of, I hate the word style because it kind of puts you in a box. But if you're consistent with what you're saying, with what you want to say, with your expression, everything else becomes part of you. And for me, I've been lucky. I don't know if I'll call it lucky, but like I said, I'm multidisciplinary. There are people who don't even know my paintings. And there are people, especially in the rap community, who don't even know that I paint. Yes, but they will know. When they see a painting, they will know, but this must be you. But they've never seen my paintings. They don't even know that I paint. But they know a bit of the fashion because, with fashion and hip-hop and music. And when you see my fashion, you will still know. Even if it's someone else, if it looks like mine, they'll say, hey, no, that's not mine. That's a young student at university. So that, I think, comes with time, but also with consistency and what you want to say. When you have a voice. For me, I look at my practice as really like my fashion is an extension of my art. My art is an extension of my poetry. That's how I've really, so, and sometimes it's harder to put a story, to try and painting and fashion and put them, but there are people who see the layers. Like there is she's a curator and she's also an artist. She's called Nagawa. She's also a writer. Some of these fashion things I was doing, Mia, you have your stories, and then she would get a painting from somewhere and brings it and then begin to compare, to write. And then you would see that they actually blend, like the stories are almost the same. So I think part of style is also it could be part of expression, part of technique, part of voice. That even if I want to say a poem, somehow my poem will reflect in a certain fashion. In fact, I can actually say a poem, and you see these people, the pictures that we saw of the fashion, and you can place that poem below a certain picture. So I think it's important, like we're saying earlier. It's a slow process. You begin to discover, and then your style or your expression, your voice, especially voice, ties into what you want to say. Because multidisciplinary is you can still do fashion, you can sing. I want you to look at a guy, he's called Theater Gates. He's an American. But when you bring all his art together, whether it's in ceramics, he also does a bit of ceramics, whether it's even his events are like art. But you'll see that there is that something that unifies. And that, I think, comes from the voice, from what you want to say and what you stand for. Then eventually that becomes your style. The word style really is, for a couple of years now, coming from fashion, has been used, has been narrowed down. But eventually style encompasses everything that could define you. But then again, today's art, I think, is to challenge the status quo. Because if every time, that's his style, that is style. In a way, they are trying to say, like, that's you, But you can still challenge yourself to keep going in all these different spaces and these different directions, and remain you. I don't know if you get what I mean. Without people necessarily saying that's his style. But if you do something, we'll say that it had to be Kanye West. But he's doing something new, but then again, only Kanye can do that. I don't know if you get, rather than saying, Kanye, but when, and I've been lucky, actually, for me, that especially my friends or people who like my work, when I do something slightly out, they won't be surprised. They'll say, that's Xenson. But they will know it's something, like that kind of expression. So that means that I challenge myself to go beyond what I've been doing or what I do. In fact, for me, I hate to dwell on things I've done. If I've done something now, it's gone. I might not even forget. I want to do something else, like what's next. Of course, I'm always thinking of ideas, new things, but sometimes finances, sometimes the projects are big, sometimes spaces. You'll think, where can I do this project? and then maybe there are not as many spaces, or the logistics or the dynamics, but you have to keep thinking. But that thinking is something that you develop as you, especially from a young age, as a young artist. You begin to think big. You begin to think of these ideas. Some of the ideas that actually I do are ideas from 15 years ago. But I just keep pulling and putting them here. If I get an opportunity, I say, hey, I had this idea. I can begin to, Does that, yeah, thanks. Okay.
Thank you very much, Xenson. My name is Derek Muhirwa, also called Derek the Priest. Glad to have you here. I have like 3 questions. One is in regards to technology and maybe the future of art. We've seen AI coming up and things like that. Like, what do you have to say about that? The other thing is you being a multidisciplinary artist. Like, you're not only in visual arts, should I say? One of the things that drew me to you is the fact that you also were, was involved in hip hop, or you are involved in hip hop music. And I'm also a rapper, so like I want to know how did you go about it? Like, how are you taking advantage of the different facets of your artistic self to like, how do they contribute to one another? And how did you go about spaces where you are conflicted? Like, you want to come up, maybe you want to come up as a rapper, but then people are looking at you as the artist and they want you to stay there, or like those things. How have you taken advantage of the fact that you have these different gifts and used them to to push them all? Then the third question is as regards to technique and material. When you're doing your work, your process, what is it like? Are there certain things that you prefer to use over others? And what are they? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, very interesting question. But actually, what you asked, the first question, I talked about it earlier. Growing up in school, and you see, sometimes it's also almost you're not aware. But growing up, I talked about it earlier that you go to the football pitch, and then you're playing football. And then before you know it, it's evening, we are going for school choir. We had church choir. Then the following day or Saturday, then we go for music, because we had this music, what do you call them? The music competitions. Inter-school music competitions. So they are screening people who will go in the choir. Those traditional dance, soloist, abazanya amadinda, because we used to have all these layers. Nemutula amadinda, abanazanya endingidi, abanakuba engoma, those who will just be singers, backup. Then you're there. And then somehow you excel. And you see, as kids, you don't have limitations. You just go with the flow. What I also didn't say, I was at university, Makerere, I was the second goalkeeper of the university team. Seriously. And I left because the school became so busy, our coursework, you have to do. So I just stopped. I couldn't handle. But I was this is strange, but I was the second goalkeeper, Makerere University school team. So you find that there are all these layers that you keep, But then earlier, I was also talking to them about hip-hop. Hip-hop is a very interesting thing. And that's why Ugandan hip-hop is not moving, because people think it's rap. Hip hop is an entire culture, and for me, I engross myself in all these layers. Obviously, I had a bit of, hip hop. I was talking about four major elements: graffiti, DJ, MC, b-boy or breakdance. But then you had these other two elements. One of them is knowledge, street knowledge, and then there was fashion. If you looked at the earlier hip hop videos or even films, you would see that fashion was always a part of the music videos. The rappers were putting on these crazy costumes. Bambata, the big African medallions, like Public Enemy. You remember Public Enemy, and there, So there are all these layers, and then graffiti, which is the expressionist of hip hop. So graffiti as an art. So I found myself, and I think with hip hop I mainly I was still writing rhymes and poetry, but I think most people know me for graffiti. Putting all these tags all over Kampala, all over the place. You remember? So most people know more of the graffiti. And of course, even the albums I've been recording, but maybe people know one album. I've been working on another which I want to release, Cloak or whatever, because I've been recording a bit. But sometimes you keep things there, then life moves, life goes on. But when you position yourself, I've already said that for me, art is one thing. And everything that I do is one thing. It's just that it's a state of mind where I'm at a certain point, or what I want to say. Is fashion, will fashion tell this story better, or will it be hip hop, a rhyme? Will it be poetry, or will it be a painting? And most of my paintings are really like remedies. They are therapies of the other sides. That's one thing I've not always talked about. But when you hear my rhyme, then you see the fashion. There is a semblance there. So they are not without each other. So in fact, some poems become fashion ideas. Like I had this poem about the suffocation of political opponents. We all know, there was time of, and not just political opponents, but there is this rhyme. I am a serial rapist. I viciously raped the very sovereign of the state on which I sit. I systematically rendered its constitution absolutely obsolete. When you see some of these fashions, you will see that when you see this design, this guy, then you will know there will be a relation. So, and I've been lucky that people have not, there are a few people who try to put you in especially art collectors, who want to put you in a certain box. But you should just paint. But if you consistently, and we've talked about this, consistency and intentionality, if this is what guides you, then people will know you for that. Look at Kanye. And what Kanye is doing, actually we did. In fact, if I bring my album, university pictures and everything, and what we used to do. In fact, some people call me and say, Kanye reads your book. That's what they call me. But of course, he's a bigger artist, all this. But what does that mean? It means that you can do anything without being limited if you put focus on it. Of course, it's a challenge here because some of them need money and all that, but you need to know that you need to invest back. And sometimes people would want, for instance, it's not even an excuse, but you really need to invest back. That's why you find Gravity is now the biggest hip-hop artist. Why? Because the real lyricists are sitting at home. or you see hip hop or you chidandali. But you need to come out. That's the other thing, is you need to come out and consistently. You know Lyrical G. Lyrical G has 10 albums, man. And people now know him because he comes out and he expresses himself. So when you keep coming out and showing, actually the word is showing your work. And for artists also, it's something I was forgetting. You need to show your work. We were talking earlier that how many artists these last few years are having solo exhibitions. You can only have a solo exhibition because if you're consistent and you're working. So I don't know if that answers a bit of your question. That so for me, people saw me with that, and so they accepted that. Of course, there are spaces that I didn't go into very much, but also the other thing is, it's not just the state of art, visual art, but it's the state of the creative industry, that we are so in our own spaces. I've been talking about Basquiat. I talk about Andy Warhol. In America, in the 70s, musicians, visual artists, poets, rappers, always congregated they met in the same spaces. So they would share ideas. Andy Warhol made so many album covers for all these rock artists. You know Andy Warhol, the artist. And then Cop 2, the graffiti artist, made many album covers for rock artists, but also for rappers. And then there was Dapper Dan. Dapper Dan is he's the pioneer of urban street fashion. So if you look at the history books, he made all the costumes of most of the rappers, but also of the Beatles, you know. So because they were in the same spaces and sharing the same, and that's why I think this thing should have been actually the state of the creative industry. How can musicians interact with poets? How can musicians interact with designers? How can musicians work with artists? You see, this synergy creates all these layers, you know, because there are music albums, there's graphics to be done, there is costumes. Poets can write very good songs for musicians if they did interact, you know. You find bad music, bad lyrics, because the musicians are alone there in their own space. And then you look at the music videos, there are no art directors. They all look the same. They all look ugly. You know, so all these layers. And that's why Kanye is a good example to, especially to music, to the creative arts, that he doesn't necessarily limit himself. He knows that he can do his design, he can do his production, he can do his rap. In fact, to answer again your question, Kanye was signed to Rockefeller. And most of the executives wanted him to stay a producer. They said, they knew he could rap a bit, but they still put a foot, you know, like you were a producer. But then he kept fighting. Guys would be there rhyming, he would come in and rhyme. And then eventually guys accepted him. So sometimes you have to fight for yourself. Then AI, you're talking of technology. I think technology is a good tool, especially in terms of production, in terms of easing the ways of producing art. I think the challenge is taking away the human hand. I think I'm not sure artists will be challenged, or it will reflect on the artist. But I think the concept of the human hand is special. Really, you can't beat that, you know. I don't know where it will end. It's disruptive, of course, especially now that it can even clone your voice. There are these songs. There is a song recently that was produced by AI. The guy is rhyming like Jay-Z. In fact, some people thought it was Jay-Z, then like Kendrick Lamar. You know, so it's a bit in terms of copyright and image rights, because otherwise it steals your image. So you might become irrelevant, or you know. But I think as a tool to advance our creativity, to use it, it's good. But if we give it all the authority, then I don't know if, I think the human hand. In fact, though, the jobs that are going to stay, because I know that AI is going to take away many jobs, but I feel that the jobs that are going to stay are those that are used by the human hand and the human brain for you to think and make. So making really is the ultimate. Which other question that okay, so sometimes, of course, my materials come from my surroundings, from nature, recycle, but not necessarily recycle, but materials that I find interesting. And this is the other thing for me. Everything I look at, it's either a fashion or it's an art. So any material that I look at, I first look at it as a sculpture. Can this material make a good sculpture? Can it make a good fashion? Then I start from there. But also, of course, there are layers of what you want to say. Like I use a lot of the tire, the car tire. First, it's a material that is close to myself from Lugabire. But then when you look at it, it's also a material that is used during riots, during what do you call bachita batya abantu abangi ne babalomba mob justice nga bakutaddemu dde ekipiiro oba toneewozaako nga bakukumyeko dde akabiriiti, you know, like. So but there are many layers to Lugabire, because the process of making Lugabire bajjako kino ekyawansi and then they make Lugabire. But there are all these other things that stay, what happens. And then waliwo obukebe. You look at them and like, okay. And then, of course, consumption. And then you think, not necessarily thinking of environment, but you can think, okay, these might look good if I use them like this. But then they enter into another layer of climate change and of recycle and reuse. Then that's another layer that they go on, you know. But then also for me, also to demystify, because as Africans, what's our contribution to the collective memory of humanity? I think if we need to begin to look at our own indigenous expressions. So that's why things like lubugo, bark cloth, because these are our materials. It's like cotton. So I use it as also a political tool, but also to show that I think it's a beautiful material. For UNESCO to gazette it as an art form of high end really shows that it's a good material. It's unique to Uganda. So it's really simple like that. To use it in fashion, in my art, to use the reeds. Of course, the reeds, sometimes I use them as also building material, either as prison or as freedom. Ekisakaate kukusibiramu gireme kujja bigundi oba kugamba temufuluma. There are many layers to things. So these are things we can always use. But then also part of materiality or material is, even from my hip hop or from wherever, proverbs, sayings, language, A language is a huge material. It's a huge tool. Era nze ngamba nnyo, I think I ndowooza mu Luganda before English, because English is, let's face it, it's a poor language. It has the literature is slim. It's known the world over that English is a slim language. It's not rich like Bantu languages. So what does that mean? If I want to talk about a certain issue, I will come from the perspective of Olugero. And then I will come from their departure point and then come to the city, to the cosmopolitan, to the contemporary, to the urban. But my departure point is from the other side. So what does that mean? It depends if I'm looking at Olugero, like Otele Kalubugo Walumbe Mubbe, that you're hanging on something that is already gone. I could decide to use backcloth literally, but I could also decide to use cans or water bottles or metal or whatever, depending on how I want to relay the message. So, I'm not limited really by materiality, but there are certain things that you will keep working on, and then that material might become you. But some people keep experimenting and running away and then discovering new materials, new things. And also the thing is, there are things you look at and they are really could become really, really interesting. And for me, that's the point of creating. That you feel in a certain space after creating something or discovering something. And that's why I find Ugandan music, for instance, a bit boring, because the producers produce the same thing. The writers write the same thing. I don't envision this musician in a studio jumping up and down excited. This is it. This is new. No, because they have a template. So with the template, you can't be excited. And that's why, and people, and sorry, talk about rap. You see, with rap, when you write your 16 bars, there is a certain excitement, because also as an ethos of hip-hop, each bar for 20 songs can never be the same. So when you write 16 bars, you feel like, and then you even want to edit, and put the punchlines and put the layers, the wit, So it becomes, even for art as you create, there are these layers that we talked a lot, but I'm hoping that I answer a bit of your.
Thank you so much for that. Actually, how I got to know about you very many years back, as I saw your signature graffiti sprayed somewhere.
I might not tell you, but I can't. It's a long story, but I can talk about one later. But the logo itself is like a bird flying, but it can also be a spear. It can be an eagle spreading out, but X. Yeah, maybe I'll any other questions or whatever? Okay, I'm coming to that. So X, the beginning is expressive, exquisite, exact, extraordinary, extracurricular, exorbitant, explicit. You can keep. So it's excellent. It's basically the X. I never talked about this actually. It's strange. So I know we are caught up a bit by time, but Nyavo.
You said you are a fashion designer, right? And I wanted to know, because I'm also a fashion designer and a model, so I want to know which kind of fashion do you specifically do? Is it the costume kind of fashion, or you also do the wearable fashion? Yeah, and also how do you market your work? What are the best means you've used to market your work? And how do you price? Do you price according to your brand or according to the effort that you put in your work?
Which was the first question? Okay, yeah. So fashion is fashion. It depends on what you want to say. Sometimes I use it as sculpture to say something, sometimes as poetry. And people might say that's costume or that's haute couture. But sometimes I make, depending on like denim, street fashion for hip hop. But it's also saying something because fashion should be able to say something. Whether it's wearable, ready to wear. Of course, today there is what they call fast fashion, which is a slightly harder thing in Uganda because we don't have production facilities, we don't have materials and all that. But it's also up to you to decide really what you want to do and why you want to do fashion. And obviously today the layer of is dying out. You see these fashion houses, you see Gucci, they have ethos, they have a history of the fashion brand, what the brand stands for. So they keep to that. And you will see it like Gucci, or let's say Lagerfeld, it's built on craftsmanship, the Italian craftsmanship. So you'll find for many years, 30 years down the road, all the collections have a layer of that. McQueen, I don't know if you know Alexander McQueen. He's inspired by the Gothic, the Goth era. So all his collections, you'll see avant-garde, but they are wearable. And sometimes also if you, with Europe, if you make, if you're a good designer, people will buy into your brand. So there will be little things like T-shirts, sneakers, but you're known for something as a creative, then people buy into these little things like books, perfumes, and whatever. And then pricing, yes and no. Right now, I think it's more of a brand. Like, I don't want my brand to be... if you live in university, it's even like art, really. If you live in university, you can't say, my painting is $1,000. Like, let's say Pondema, who has painted for what? For 10, 20 years. I don't know if you understand. So the time and longevity of the brand sometimes might determine the pricing. Material, yes, you can think of the material and time, but I think as you go forward, you'll find that your brand is really determined by longevity and what it stands for a bit of time. It's like hiring a musician. If you're going to hire Chameleon or Juliana, you don't expect to give Juliana the same amount as Alien Skin. I think it's simple like that, really, in a way. Which is the other question? The other question? Yeah. So marketing, the first marketing tool is your work. First, do good work. That's the first marketing. Quality, good, expressive, creative, different, unique. That's your first selling point. That's first your marketing. That's the first layer of marketing. Then eventually when people see some uniqueness, maybe a journalist will come. Of course, today people, it's the other way around. Someone is trying to do something and they run to the journalist. But people are always looking. So if you're doing good work, journalists will come to you. TV will come to you. Then the marketing will start from there. Obviously, now we don't have many magazines. We used to have magazines. But first do good work and then show it. Today people look, and we talk about it always, that people don't want to show their work because maybe they are not going to profit out of it. Maybe they won't get money out of it. They don't want to exhibit because they won't get money. But then no one will see your work. But if you do good work, invite some people, your friends. Even if you don't make money, invite some journalists, invite a TV station. Actually, today people are looking for content. Then they will come. And then if your work is good, the people you've invited, friends and their friends, journalists will write good stuff about your work. And then people will begin to check you out, because this will be your ambassadors. But ambassadors can only talk good about you if the work is good and if they've been inspired. But if they say, sorry, we are at this show, but man, that guy, she has a long way to go. But if they see potential, then they will tell another friend, then tell another friend. And then when you have a second show, then many people will come. But you have to keep consistent. Sometimes maybe it's good, sometimes it's bad, but you have to keep working. Then you build your brand like that. And then before you know it, I know it takes a bit of time, but then before you know it, many people know about your brand. And then when you start to produce your products, then people, first they have this sentiment, people begin to, it's unfortunate to start, and I lost it in translation, to be up there and start big and then all of a sudden you can't handle. But if you start slow, let me end, the rapper Sokatwe can rhyme.
Sabule, introducing the rapper himself, the priest.
Yes, the priest. Thank you so much. It's an honor to perform for you guys. Anyway, this is let me perform this song. It's a piece that guys relate to the most. Let me just get into it without explaining too much. So she asked me if I loved her. I was silent. Couldn't tell her something that was not heartfelt. She came close with eyes closed. I posed 1,000 thoughts through my brain. Now I'm froze. Funny thing is, Chewunyisa had been waiting for this moment just to kiss her, but missed her. I couldn't take advantage of her friend, so I called it quits and had to ditch her. Well, technically, she ditched me. She broke it off of her phone. I'm thinking, baby, you will miss me. Was hoping we would get back together, but God planned something better. Many years later in a song, I write you a letter just to explain. I still thought you were fire, but you were meant for another. And though my brain wouldn't retire, my heart had signed out like a punctured tire. So when I say Sichiwulira, you guys respond Mondamuli, right? Sichiwulira, it's not you, it's just me, girl. I really can't explain it. I feel we need to part ways. Let's do it one more time. Sichiwulira, it's not you, it's just me, girl. I really can't explain it. I feel we need to part ways. No. Thank you.
Pleasure. Just 1 minute. Nange kangatireko okwo. Bwembuuza ziriwa mugamba zibuze. Ziriwa zibuze. Ziriwa zibuze. Ziriwa bwenziramu zibuliddewa abajambula ababuzeewo nazo. Mukategedde? Zibuliddewa abajambula ababuzeewo nazo. Ziriwa n'amaanyi. Ziriwa zibuliddewa wabula zibuze olubula, zibuze lune, zibuze tezibalika, nogezaako okuzibala ozala maziga. Zibuze olubula efuuse ngombo, naye ate abazirina bo bajjuza byombo. Ekyennyamiza waliwo abazibuza, bazibuza olubuza tobuuza na kubuuza. Zonna ezigwa mu nvubo bo ze babuza, ezanduguza eddagala zibuliza muzenva. Bw'obuuza ziragawa bakuzanya zaalo, zaala buzaazigi, kaseera kazigizigi. Zinja bwengezaako bampita zizinga, tunejja tutyamu kikko ng'enguze tuzinzeeko. Ziriwa zibuze. Ziriwa zibuze. Zibuliddewa abajambula. Oyinza okugamba zibuze nga gwata zinoonyeza. toyiyiza weegayaaza ozanya buzanyi zaala n'olowooza zino ezaala bwongo buukalu zolo okubujjuza magengere bwe mwekatankiramu balaba otagala bakutongoza kuba bagulirayo tonto ku katono kokazana zolo teweetantala keziri tolontoka ne zikuyita kulitalaba tebali kutaliza bali kuleka bwomu ziriwa.
That was amazing. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Xenson. I hope that this has been helpful for you. So some of the artists will be painting our murals, and they sent through their concepts. And so we'll have a brief session where Xenson will look at the pieces and give feedback. But also if you have questions on how you can make your work better, this is the time to ask Xenson that, since you'll be starting painting tomorrow. And for those who will be painting, we'll have a small meeting before you leave with Marianne so that you get to sign your MOUs, but also for her to do just a few housekeeping rules before you start tomorrow. So don't leave. We'll go up together, or I'll just send you up and you find Marianne. So yeah, I don't remember, but I think this is George, okay? Thank you.